welcome everyone. Many thanks. Thanks for being here, whether in person or on Zoom, and I hope we'll connect either way. I am going to ask you not to ask questions until the end of the presentation. So please make notes if you have a pencil. I should have brought pencils for you, because otherwise I'll never get through this. Your questions are very important. We'll have time for discussion. It's not that long, the presentation, but if we stop for questions, it will interrupt the flow. So please hold questions at home and here, and I'm going to start. Today, I'm here to help you discover that it's possible to be sick without suffering. Whether you have a serious illness, chronic pain, face surgery, suffer aches and pains, feel understandable anxiety about aging or fears of death, have experienced COVID or long COVID, suffer from one of the invisible diseases that doctors can't name, but you feel. Hi, welcome. What's your name?
I'm Val.
Oh, Val. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for your wonderful article in the Spy. It was really true. I'll begin by telling you the start of my story. It began with a nickel-sized buzzing on the inside of my left ankle. I was pregnant with my daughter, Anna. My OBGYN said it would disappear after I delivered. It did not. It spread under my left foot, up my leg, and then painful personal fireworks started in my hands, and they spread up my arms. Hot spots, like someone was rubbing my ear and left arm with Szechuan peppers. I thought I might be crazy. I thought I might be a hypochondriac. I thought I might get so sick that I would disappear. But I didn't disappear. I finally went to a female neurologist who actually listened to me and said, I bet you thought you were crazy. Then she explained that all my symptoms followed nerve roots all over my body and suggested several terrifying autoimmune diseases. In case you probably know, but in case you don't, autoimmune means our healthy immune system protects our bodies against disease and infection. A malfunctioning autoimmune disease, a malfunctioning immune system mistakenly affects cells, tissues, and organs. These attacks can affect any organ in the body and turn life-threatening. In my case, the autoimmune system was affecting the myelin covering on my peripheral nerves, which are all the nerves that leave the spine, not the central nervous system, as in MS, for example. If you think of myelin, what is myelin? Think of a lamp cord and think of the rubber coating as the myelin and the wires inside as the nerves. And it was attacking the rubber coating, the myelin. And so it began. Doctors, tests, more doctors, and nobody knew what was going on. It was very mysterious because it turned out to be a very, very rare something. I was determined to find a cure and turn temporarily into Superwoman without a cape. I had 2 small children, a wonderful husband, a job I loved writing Reading Rainbow and other children's television and books. And I was certain that in 1988, modern medicine would have a cure. But there was no cure. I tried everywhere, the Mayo Clinic, the National Institutes of Health, the U.S. Army Research Arm, every hospital in New York City, and there was nothing. Barely any treatments, and they were all terrible. Meanwhile, I got worse. The answer, I found, wasn't cure. It was healing. And I had to learn that that had to come from within. I didn't just want to be sick. I searched for meaning. I wanted to understand what it meant to be really sick and how I could live with it in a meaningful way. First, I searched for books that would help me, and they were very hard to find. One of the best was Viktor Frankl's 1946 Man's Search for Meaning. And if you haven't read that book, I recommend that you do it. It's a slim little volume full of fascinating and important information for anybody who's sick, because it talks about meaning. Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist who was arrested by his family by the Nazis. His wife sewed the manuscript he'd just finished into his overcoat into the coat he wore when they all reached Auschwitz. By the end of that day, they took his coat, his wife, his little girl, and he never saw them again. But Dr. Frankl wanted to survive, and he observed that those who did found a reason, a meaning central to them, which enabled them to live despite terrible circumstances. He spent his nights trying to remember and memorize his manuscript. And he saw that those who had a central meaning were the ones who lived. This drove my own central search for meaning, because I wanted to live too. And so when I was too sick to work anymore, in the fun, glitzy world of children's television, I began to write this book, My Own Search for Meaning. From the beginning, I had no interest in asking why me, but instead always asked, what's next? I felt the why me question not only had no answer, which it doesn't, but it pushed me into what I called the pit, the deep, dark, muddy place I couldn't claw my way up out of. And believe me, I spent a lot of time down there, asking what's next always propelled me forward. My book, Fierce Joy, took me 7 years to write, and I wrote it in doctors' waiting rooms, hospital beds, in a marble notebook like kids use in first and second and third grade. And it's a memoir exploring the physical, psychological, and spiritual circumstances I faced as a wife, mother of 2 young children, and writer when those diseases pruned me back. When I lost work I was deeply devoted to, I had to cobble together a new life with a smaller circumference, a life with no paychecks or snazzy titles, no credits on books or television screens, no awards or reviews, and without the deep pleasure of collaboration with colleagues. In my search for help, 2 friends who shared the secret handshake of illness introduced me to Dr. Eric Cassell, a medical doctor with a lifetime of experience as a daily practitioner and teacher. At midnight, after all his patients went home, Eric taught me the crucial importance of so many ideas that I want to share with you today. Here are the amazing ideas Eric and I explored together that I hope will help you. First, my body is not my enemy. Disease is our enemy. When I first got sick, like most people, maybe you, I began to hate my body. It hurt. It didn't work. I felt like it had betrayed me. Eric helped me understand that my body had not betrayed me. Rather, disease was attacking me and my body, which means something entirely different. It meant my body and I were still one and the same, and disease was attacking us from outside. This allowed me to feel at one with my body and whole again, which was profoundly healing. Then we talked about how I can't control my body, but I can control my responses to illness. No matter what the illness, and I make a distinction between illness and disease. We almost always feel helpless. When I'm sick, like most people, I often feel helpless because I can't control my disease, can't control my body, can't walk normally, never know when I'll be attacked again. To this day, I don't know what new organ or part of my body will be afflicted next. But I'm not helpless, not completely, because I can control how I respond. What are some of those healthy responses? Some are intellectual, becoming educated about the disease and its treatments, deciding the best chance medications and treatments, getting a second opinion, even a third, refusing to be squelched by my symptoms, doctors, apparent situations like loneliness, pain, new circumstances that I don't like. Other healthy responses are emotional, actively seeking solace from friends, a therapist, a support group. And support groups can be salvation, I tell you, especially when run by professionals. Otherwise, they can turn into, complaint situations. Searching for new interests when your old ones are no longer possible, and refusing to be blotted out by change. Other healthy responses are useful, not just useful. Creating a cooperative problem-solving relationship with your doctor. Deciding to take a hopeful attitude, to do whatever you can to get even a little bit better. We always have choices. I do not have to be knocked out by disease, its symptoms or its treatments. I can decide how I want to live despite my disease. How to be sick without suffering. I learned that by dealing with my illness with the maturity of an adult woman, no longer cowed by the fears and attitudes of a small child. I revisited my childhood fears of my father's illnesses with Eric, and my own misunderstandings of disease and death. And I began to see them through adult eyes and change their meanings. Here's a key example. When I was a child, I saw the injections I got from my pediatrician from an hypodermic that looked like this. But then I had to start getting daily or weekly injections, they cost a lot of money and a lot of time that I did not want to spend. I wanted to live my life instead of going to doctor's office. So Eric taught me to inject myself. But he lined up these little hypodermics in his office at midnight. And I said, okay, Eric, where's the orange? He said, what orange? I said, well, in the movies, they always have an orange. They practice on an orange. He said, Ellen, we're not in the movies. He said, you're going to inject yourself. So he had a big bottle of water and all these little hypodermics. So he taught me how to draw the water up into the hypodermic. That was fine. Then he taught me to get the bubbles out. I had read that if you injected yourself and the bubbles went in, you'd have an aneurysm and die. He said, you're not going to do that. We're going to get the bubbles out. You flick the thing. So finally, I had the guts to put this teeny tiny little needle into my thigh, and it didn't hurt at all. I couldn't believe it. So this was an example of being an adult woman instead of a terrified 3-year-old looking at a big hypodermic and looking at this teeny tiny little needle. And that's just one example of how I became an adult woman instead of a 3-year-old and looked at my illness in an adult way. And there are ways that you can do that with your doctor, with your friends, with your family, with yourself. Using pain medication. We spent a lot of time on that. It was the first thing we actually tackled. My disease is extremely painful, and I initially refused to take any pain medication because I thought it would make me a coward. I should be a hero, live with it, stiff upper lip. And Eric said, why are you doing this? It makes you fatigued. It makes you unable to do the things that you love to do. And you won't become an addict. You'll take the medicine and you'll be able to live your life. So gradually we titrated the medicine up, little by little. It did not affect my brain, did not affect my emotions. I take pain medication every day. It's been 25 years now. I write, I paint, I teach, I love, and I do not find myself affected by pain medicine, except that I don't have as much pain as I used to have. And that's a release that's miraculous to me. I wouldn't be able to lead the life that I live if I did not take pain medicine. And I am not addicted, because when you have pain, for example, after a surgery, you start to forget to take the pain medicine as the pain of the surgery recedes. And that's happened to me many times after many surgeries. So without these drugs, I wouldn't be able to function. This is a lesson that was invaluable to me. Another suggestion that I have that came from another friend who had the secret handshake of illness was, when you're angry, take 10 minutes. And this came from a friend with lupus who was a litigator, and she lost her ability to speak after a stroke. She became aphasic. But she told me, very slowly, as she began to speak again, that she took 10 minutes every time she was really angry. She raged, she broke dishes, she had a temper tantrum, and she took 10 minutes to get that anger out. She said, I have to get it out or I just can't function. And then she would break the dishes, she'd sweep them up, and she'd go on. And she told me that when she got a little better, she went back to court and she said to the judge, I speak very slowly, but I'm worth listening to. And she won her case. So take 10 minutes. When you're sick, you get angry. And it's very good to get that rage out. Another way of dealing with sickness without suffering is to create a good relationship with your doctors, and you can help shape those relationships actively. I come prepared with written questions every time I go to the doctor. I write the questions down when I email or call, and I pull the conversation back on my track if the doctor goes off on something that's his thing but isn't answering my questions. If I want a doctor to take an interest in my life, I try to take a little bit of an interest in his or her life. If I can tell a doctor is really rushed and having a bad day, I have a shorter appointment because I understand. But if a doctor's interaction never goes well, if a doctor never shows respect for me and my needs, I fire that doctor and I get another one. You can fire a doctor if the doctor isn't giving you what you need. And that's very important to know. I live for today and not 10 years from now. My disease is rare, the drugs to treat it are rare, and over the years, I've spent many weeks in the hospital for intravenous, and the potential side effects when I was a young woman with little kids were terrifying. But that's what the doctor said I needed, so I did it, and here I am. So I don't live for 10 years from now, I live for now, and there I am. I had a husband to cherish, I had little kids to raise, and a career I was trying to maintain, and I took the drugs. Once I faced the fact that my diseases were incurable, I set my sights on healing, not curing. And this is a really important part of living with a disease and not suffering. Curing is a purely physical matter involving flesh and bone. Healing involves the intangible. the ineluctable and the ineluctable, the spirit and the soul. How do I do this? I court healing by making peace with my disabilities, by taking pain medication, by not flying into the future, and by being grateful for what I have right now. I court healing with my doctors and have helped them understand through positive feedback, conversation, and mutual compassion for their needs that a kind word and a pat on my shoulder, that they can offer essential solace during a rough period, and there have been rough periods, that when things go haywire, for example, when I had this septic meningitis, the word we'll get through this, can be healing even when cure is impossible. A deep sense of gratitude. Paradoxically, the more circumscribed my life has become because of disease, I found a robust gratitude bubbling up in me, more abundant as I learned to pray. Gratitude for my exceptional husband, Jim, who never forsakes me. Gratitude for my children who give me ballast through my love for them and theirs for me. For my fair and foul weather friends who have extended so much and taught and given me so much. I see them. I see them. I am no longer afraid of death. I lived most of my life clenched against death. But as I learned in a Jewish spiritual healing group from Rabbi Simcha Weintraub, our souls survive our bodies. A radiant gift I carry with me always. Letting go of the fear of death is like carrying a balloon instead of a cannonball. I can breathe more air than ever before. It turns the fierce joy of survival, even for me, who will never be physically perfect, into a daily blessing. If you look on the cover of my book, you'll see that the ivy feeds this beautiful flower. It's not just medication. For me, serious illness can even feed joy, not tepid, easy, saccharine happiness, but joy that flames up out of harsh moments against all expectations. It's honey from the rock of loss and pain, delight born of small events and valuable people like the ones on Zoom and in this room. And it burns like a flame despite loss and dread. I hope you'll discover your own joy, fierce or quiet, and that today has brought you even closer. I thank you for coming, and I have a little ritual of healing that I'd like to engage with you. So after that, we'll talk about your questions and your observations. That's the end of my presentation, but I do have this little ritual that I'd like you to engage in with me if you're willing. Are you willing? Yes? Okay. So what I have here are ordinary pebbles from my garden. So if you could come up and get one, or maybe get a few and then give them, actually, you can give them out. The little ones are the best ones. I didn't know how many people would come. Sorry. Those of you at home can do this with someone at a later time. It's very simple. Can you hear me? Okay. You can keep the pebble. Okay. One of the best things I've ever learned through the secret handshake of illness is that one of my psychological or even physical lowest, the most important and meaningful thing I can do is to reach out to someone else, in person, on the phone, or email. And I promise you, it helps me as much or even more than the person I'm reaching out to. So I'd like to end the formal part of this by enacting this ritual with you. One I learned from Rachel Naomi Remen, a doctor and rabbi who suffered all her life from a very painful chronic illness. She wrote a wonderful book with a terrible title called Kitchen Table Wisdom. It's an incredible book if you want to read something wonderful about healing, about illness. She taught that rituals are one of the oldest ways in the world to mobilize our power for healing. Ritual can make the caring of a community or an individual visible and tangible. Okay, here's an ordinary stone from my garden. It fits in the palm of your hand. Think of a time when you faced a crisis, the death of someone you loved, losing your job, a time of terrible illness of you or someone you loved, another loss or grief. Now think of a personal quality that helped you endure that time. Was it determination, courage, faith, humor? Now pour that quality into your little stone and give it to someone here. You can give one to me, Jim. I'll give you an example of what I've done in the past. I put love in this stone for you. Okay, I'm going to give it to you. I put love in this stone for you because one day, I'll give it to you. You can sit. Because one day when I was having a spinal tap, which is one of the most terrifying medical things to me, I realized that when I thought about loving Jim and Anna and Alex, I realized that made me stronger. So I'm going to give this to you, Justin, because I love you. You don't have to do it, but if you'd like to do it, it would be a good thing. And you can say it out loud so we can.
Tenacious.
So I
It's
want
interesting. I mean, some of the
Okay, then let's do it one at a time so we can learn from each person,
tenacious.
I'm going to say this for my daughter.
right?
I
Who's
learned
going
some
to
things don't come quickly.
Okay, let's listen to Betty. Yes, and what are you pouring into your stone?
I'm giving you patience. I'll do this one.
Jim, it's okay, Jim.
What? Sorry.
Courage,
really courage.
okay. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. Who else would like to say something?
Surrender to faith and whatever management upstairs has in my curriculum, to trust everything will turn out all right because I'm not always in control. Just going with it.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Betty. Anybody else?
Conviction.
Oh,
Ellen, what you have to say is so relevant to aging, the aging process. And here I am living in a home with a lot of older people. We socialize, we cheer each other up, but there are also scary aspects to it.
so what would you put in your stone to give to one of your friends? I know you have many friends where you live.
Well, the first word that came to me was hope. Resilience, the ability to tell a joke, to laugh at somebody else's joke, to smile. Good things.
Thank you, Doris. That's lovely. Thank you. Jim, what were you thinking about?
Well, the quality that I focused on was patience, which is not always easy for me to wait, to hold my own emotions and feelings in check sometimes when things need to take time to heal, to get better, to overcome a difficult moment. And I have found that being able to wait and not rush things is very helpful. And helpful in particular when dealing with chronic conditions which ebb and flow, which need some time to elapse. So patience is something that I've tried to learn, and when I have been able to manifest it, it has usually paid off.
You have shown enormous patience, and I'm so grateful. Thank you.
When my brother had an incurable disease, and he went through it with such determination. He never gave up. It was determination, and it was courage and hope. And I'll give this to you. It's like a little dragon on it.
Oh, it does. Oh, it does. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll keep this in my hand. Anyone else? You don't have to. You don't
I
have to.
want to, the quality that I've learned to acknowledge about myself is resilience. No matter what has happened, nothing like what you've had to deal with, for sure. More emotional things and family things. But because of I didn't realize how resilient I am. And I want to give that to you. Resilience, darling.
Thank you, Dodie. And thank you so much. I have two.
And
It's not a contest. I don't have a single word for it, but when there seems nothing outside the loss and pain, I found that seeking, and one never has to look very far, something beautiful, either created by a human or likely perhaps something in nature that's beautiful, can be very tiny, as a reminder that there is the world outside my pain, and it is beautiful, and there is meaning. If I think there's nothing beyond what I'm suffering, or whatever, there is meaning in that beauty, and that is sustaining, even when I have no idea what to do.
I share that finding sustainment. It's not really a word. That beauty sustains me. It's not the only thing, but I share that with you, Charles. Thank you. Anybody?
I'm going to follow up on that because I think that's quite lovely. And I think that, I appreciate certainly the beauty of the world, but in some ways, whatever it is that gets you outside of yourself and outside of that pain is really the trick. And I know that this is something that's very important for Ellen.
People on Zoom, do you want to talk? Do you want to say things that have sustained you, even if you don't have a pebble in your hand? Hi, Jeannie.
I would be happy to share, and I do have a pebble. I had one on my desk, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a perfect thing to pour some beautiful qualities into it. So, gosh, I keep changing my mind when I hear other people share. I'm like, oh, I should put that in there. I would love to put more patience into my pebble. But I think that what I'm going to go with is the quality of determination that when I am up against it, I find that I really do have this quality that comes to my rescue every single time, which is like, yes, I can continue on in some way that I haven't thought of before. So maybe there's also some creativity that I could put into it as well.
I bet you could.
And thank you for this. This is just such a beautiful way of sharing with each other this exercise. So thank you.
I give credit to Rabbi Remen. Anybody else on?
I would like to add something. During a period of time of critical illness, when I was in the hospital for about 5 or 6 weeks, I used humor. And
Well, your mic is off.
He's not on mute,
You-
but his sound just dropped.
Your sound has dropped.
Oh dear.
Can you hear you?
Maybe this is part of a joke.
Yeah, it's not funny. No, it's not funny.
Michael, we're not hearing you, Michael.
He can't hear us.
He can't hear us?
Can you hear you?
Justin,
Michael, can you hear me?
It's on his end.
We can't hear you.
it's on his end.
I'll send him a message.
Oh, he had so much to say.
Yeah.
Oh, what a pity.
I'll find a way to laugh at it, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's done.
It's on the scene before. It's amazing.
Is Lynn speaking?
While we figure this out, does anybody else want to say something?
I do. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
When I had an accident that left me in bed for quite a while, a friend of mine made the comment that has really stuck with me in bad times, and that is, don't worry, God has you. And the lesson for me was to learn that, it's God who determines what's going to happen to me. And as much as I try to do it myself, it's his hand who really makes the difference. And that faith helps me get through things.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I share conviction? This is for Lynn. Lynn, can you hear me? You have more conviction, determination, and so many qualities. And it's because of that Chesapeake Forum survives and flourishes. So I share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. But honestly, if it's not a one-person show here. For a lot of people working, we wouldn't be where we are.
Maybe we should turn to comments that you have about the presentation, questions, comments, what it meant to you, disagreements, anything?
I have something I'd like to bring up.
Yes, Betty?
If I can get through it. This is because of my daughter who's having surgery tomorrow, and she's suffering with RA, and she's young. Anyway,
Actually, she's suffering with
Rheumatoid arthritis.
yes. She has doctors who are not sympathetic to her case. And actually, her pain doctor that she's been going to cut her off. Just boom. Said, I'm not going to give you any more pain medication because I think
that you are relying on it too much. In other words, he thought she was an addict. She is taking pain medication and some of it is opioid, but it's not huge amounts, but every day. And she said, you know, it helped me and he's taking it away. So we discussed her talking to the medical professionals down in Virginia, where she was a board or something, to see if, you know, they could get in touch with the doctor and ask, why did you do this to this patient? And it was just, it wasn't something that she saw coming. It just happened one day. He called and he said, you are no longer a patient. So she went looking for another pain management company, and all of them rejected her for one reason or another. One was because they thought maybe she was taking too much, and another one wouldn't accept her insurance. That's a huge part of her deal right now is the insurance. And so I just wonder if, you know, if you had problems like that. It seems like you were able to discuss all sorts of things with your doctors. And see, I think you ought to be able to do that, you know, and they'd be sympathetic to your cause and or your pain or whatever, and help you with lots of things. Change your medication, do something to help you out.
Yeah,
So-
I wonder if the situation has changed since the opioid crisis with pain management. I mean, I would say she should find other doctors, but you say she's tried. Is she in a small town?
She's in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Is that a small town?
Well, Chesapeake isn't that huge, but that whole area, it's Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, it's a huge military complex. And there should be plenty of really good doctors there.
I don't know what to say, really. I mean, it sounds for a doctor to cut you off like that, but there must be something because of the opioid. Don't you think? I mean, the opioid situation.
I can actually chime in on that a little bit. I used to teach health in public schools. And right now with the issue specifically with opioids, especially fentanyl being a tremendous issue, I do know that in general, doctors especially, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on them to reduce the number of those types of medications they write. And everything they do is looked at and scrutinized much more carefully than it used to be. So there is quite a bit of pressure on them. And now, like pain management clinics, that kind of thing, a lot of doctors, it's a requirement now, not even that they're requiring, but they're, whether it's like malpractice insurance or whatever, is requiring that now they refer people to pain management. So they have made it much more restrictive, much more difficult across the board, especially in this area. Because Maryland, it started kind of more up north in Massachusetts and Connecticut and those areas, and now in Maryland and Virginia and everything, it's way more difficult.
You know, there are a lot of pain medications that are not opioids.
Yes.
So
She takes lots of
So
different
I
kinds.
wonder, I mean, maybe that's the only suggestion I'm not a doctor that I can make, that maybe she could have discussed with him, could she take other drugs that were not opioids? I mean, I don't think I take any opioids, and I take a lot of pain medicine, but I don't have arthritis. I mean, I have some arthritis, but I have rheumatoid.
Well, she does go to a arthritis doctor also.
Does she take steroids?
Probably, I'm not sure all, but I know she has an array of medicine she takes every morning.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would say is to look for new doctors, a new complex of doctors.
Well, that's what I've advised also, but I'm not there. I just feel bad for her. I said, how are you managing without any of the pain medication? Not just that everything went. And she said, I didn't live with it. She works every day, so at her house, but she still has to work.
I mean, doctors sometimes are like a complex. There's a doctor who works with the pain management, but maybe she could find another complex of doctors, another group of doctors that to cut somebody off. I mean, it doesn't sound well. I think Justin explained what happened.
Yes, I think you're exactly.
Well, and I think,
Explanation.
and as far as other medications, there are things for nerve pain, things like that, like Lyrica and gabapentin and stuff like that.
I
because
took
it's-
gabapentin and it's very effective.
And some of those they are, I think, what you're talking, because my father has rheumatoid arthritis real bad. The big thing with something like that though is the way that it attacks the joints. I think most of it, nerve, opioid medications seem to be the only thing that really has a profound impact on that type of pain. And so that's,
Joint pain.
yeah.
They've also had gabapentin now as is on the list where doctors have to be careful prescribing it, which I find amazing because it's used so far-reaching for so many different things.
It's a nerve pain medicine, isn't it?
Yes.
One thing, real quickly, Michael Davis just chimed in with the chat box because he couldn't speak. He says that his computer shows he wasn't muted, which it shows here too, but it's still not working. He said, when I was hospitalized for a long time with many operations, I wrote my friends emails where I made up absurd experiences in the hospital, like talking to a radiation doctor that had two heads that talked to each other. He said, finding humor in everything that happened to me kept me going.
It's great. It's great. So are there comments on the general presentation?
So I'd make a comment. I think that one of the things which is really, I think that you've been very lucky about, very fortunate, is the long-term relationships that you've had with doctors. Together we once went to a presentation, it was at the Hospital for Special Surgery, about the doctor-patient relationship, specifically with respect to chronic illness. And I found it fascinating because what they were pointing out was that many doctor-patient relationships are kind of transactional. You come in, you got a cold, how do they give you something for that? You broke a leg, you get surgery, you're done with it. But in situations where you're in a chronic illness, this is the time perspective is totally different. This is going to be with you for a while, perhaps for the rest of your life. And in those situations, it's really important to find the doctor who understands that they are embarking on a relationship. Not just, like a transaction where something's going to happen over a short period of time, but who's willing to actually, learn about the patient and their life in a way that, a transactional relationship doesn't require. And so you have been, I think, really blessed, not only with Eric, who obviously, kind of opened your eyes to a lot of things and kind of set you on a path that worked very well for you, but also, your rheumatologist.
But remember that the first rheumatologist
Right.
I fired
Correct.
because he was a very good rheumatologist. He was the head of the department and he was this big, but he didn't listen to me. And he didn't answer my phone calls. And he said, I don't like to be on the phone. You have to come in all the time. And I fired him. And then I found Ed. And Ed and I had
So I
This
remember
is
some
like
contractants.
rheumatologist for 50 years. We had to work out, it was like a marriage. I think it is chronic illness, it is like a marriage. We had to work it out. We had huge fights, screaming fights on the telephone. You would say, you expect me to predict the future, I can't predict the future. I mean, we had huge fights. And then we would settle it down and go on. So it was like a good marriage where you have a fight and you work something out and you go on. But you have to be able to talk to your doctor. And also that's what I was talking about. I found, slowly about his life and would ask him questions about his partner and his house in the country, and he raised these beautiful chickens, and I would ask him about his chickens, and so, he occasionally took care of our kids when they got really sick suddenly, even though they were grown kids and give them IVs suddenly when they were very sick and had flu. So he took an interest in our kids and he still asks about them. But it takes work, it takes work like a marriage. So it is something that you have to work at. It's not something that happens. And I think we found when we came down here that there's kind of a dearth of doctors, that you have to really wait to get a doctor's appointment and be on the list before they take you in. Certain doctors wouldn't take me because I was so complicated. They said, we won't deal with you, you're too complicated. They just wouldn't allow me to be in their practice. But I do think the message that we're saying is that it is like a marriage. With a chronic illness, you have to choose the right person and work with them and I'm trying to do that now down here and do that. And it's work, it's beginning to work. But are there other comments that?
I'm thinking you have to kiss a few more frogs. The right doctor.
So Lynn mentioned something about the importance that I think faith operated in your particular situation. And Ellen, you might want to just talk a little bit about the fact that, or elaborate upon the fact that one of the aspects of your search for meaning in connection with your own situation and your illness has been kind of a development of a dimension of spirituality that didn't exist in your life before you had growth.
It's interesting. The spirituality was there. I was growing up. I had we were Jewish. We lived in a Christian town. And I was kind of persecuted. I was the only Jewish child ever. But I always wanted to have a God. And I kind of invented my God because I didn't have one. But when I got sick, we, by accident, went to a bat mitzvah in a beautiful synagogue. And I loved it so much, I started going all the time. Jim would go to soccer games on Saturday morning, and I'd go to services. And it really became a way of my deepening my spiritual life. And it became very important to me. It gave me a way of structuring this spiritual aspect of myself that was there, but I didn't know what to do with it. And that really helped me when my illness really well, it was already terrible. But it became a really just a brightening in my life. And it has been ever since. And that's why my book is called a medical mystery, a spiritual adventure, and a love story. Because it was a spiritual adventure. Our children had bar and bat mitzvahs, and they knew all about everything, and I knew nothing. And I said, well, my children did this. I'm going to do it. So at 52, I had a bat mitzvah and learned Hebrew and how to read the Torah and began to learn about my religion. And it was like I came home to something I never had, and it was beautiful. And it became an important part of my life. So that's a part of the story that I really didn't go into in my presentation.
There is something I want to say. You're all younger than I am, and when we talk about chronic illness and things like that, aging is one of those things. You need to deal with the same kinds of issues. I'm in a residence with a lot of older people. We talk about different things. Every one of us is suffering from something. So it's kind of important to realize we're all going to have to, if we live long enough, we're going to have to deal with this.
And I talked about humor. And I have to say that this whole aging process, I'm not as far gone, but I'm getting there. And you have to laugh. I mean, I laugh at myself all the time. I talk to myself, I don't believe you did that. Or I pick up, You put the sugar in the refrigerator or something. And I just have to laugh about it because it is really funny.
I yesterday news.
It can be funny.
I had to laugh yesterday. There was a news article where they called the person elderly, and she was 60-something. And I was, that age is just such a perspective thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I used to teach a course here for ALO called Growing Old and Loving It. And some people objected to the growing old, and they said you have to be growing older. What's the difference? As long as you're loving it, you have to embrace it. And you have certainly embraced it.
Well, I mean, I don't feel old. No. I just turned 79, but I don't feel
You're
old.
not old.
I
You're
feel-
not old.
I feel young.
Right.
So that, I mean, I know that I'm older,
Yeah, right.
but that
Well, you know, old is 10 years older than you are now.
Yes,
anyway.
exactly, exactly.
Well, Ellen, I cannot thank you enough. I appreciate you. I really care for you. You have done such a mitzvah for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
All of you, thank you.
Ellen, I'm out here in Zoomville. My name is Sarah. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you, Sarah. Yes, yes, I can.
Hi, everyone. I'd just like to share quickly.
You have time. You don't have to rush.
Okay, good. I'd just like to share my experience with my first doctor. And I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in my 20s. That was a very long time ago. It was very acute in the beginning. It just spread like wildfire. So I was going to a general practitioner, and he was treating me with aspirin therapy. And when I sort of maxed out on that, and I had a wonderful support system, and they said, Sarah, I think it's time you go to a specialist. The GP never recommended I see a rheumatologist. And I just had my case was classic. So I lived in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I had a wonderful friend, a coworker, who found my first rheumatologist. And here was the key. He not only was a doctor of rheumatology, but he was a psychiatrist. What a combination. He always wanted to know what was going on in my head, what was going on in my heart, what was going on with me before he would ever ask me about my symptoms. And he treated me with such compassion and such kindness. I'm 20 years old and I can't walk and I'm losing functioning. And I would walk into the waiting room and everybody would be older and they were all in wheelchairs. And I just thought, no, this is not what I'm going to sign up for. So if anybody can find that combination with whatever specialty you need, if he also comes with a degree in psychiatry, you've got it made. And he was in Pennsylvania. I eventually moved to Maryland. That was a bit of a process, trying to find another rheumatologist here. But, almost 50 years later, I am not in a wheelchair. I worked my whole career as long as I wanted to. I didn't have to go out on disability. And life is good. And I agree wholeheartedly with the humor. I'm married to the funniest man on the planet. and he keeps me happy and joyful all the time. And as you spoke, Ellen, I am filled with gratitude, and I live in gratitude every moment that I can. And there can be sickness without suffering, for sure. The title of your book and your message today, your presentation, have just grabbed me. You validated so many things, that I have been through. I laugh at myself all the time. I drop things constantly. I used to throw tantrums and get really angry and outraged, but I just had to let that go. So it's a process, and it's been quite a journey. And I just wanted to share that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much thank you so much for what you said. I really loved it, and I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing well, and you're happy, and that's just wonderful, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I heard that story before from my daughter when she found out. She said, I did not sign up to be in a wheelchair, and she was young. And I tried to encourage her, you're not going to be in a wheelchair, you're going to do this, that, and the other. How that is mother and daughter, that doesn't always work. Psychiatrists would have been a good, really good person to talk to, or psychologist.
Well, maybe you should start there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she should start there, and maybe he can lead her to a good rheumatologist.
Yeah, I intend to do that.
That might help her.
So that was.
Not that she needs that.
No.
But that just might be a good path for her.
And I love your story about support group. I really think she could.
Run by a professional, not a
Yes.
complaint group.
No, I agree.
Because when it's just, there's no leader, it can really bog down.
Yeah.
It's still helpful, but bog down. So, and there are support groups at the, well, I'm sure that there's a National Rheumatoid Arthritis Foundation of some sort. That might be a place for her to go. That's where she might find a good rheumatologist in her area and a good pain management, and find out what's going on with this being cut off. That might be a good place for her to start.
This has been a wonderful.
Yeah, that might help her. Yeah.
You're an inspiration.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
Inspiration is a hard word for me, but there's another word I like.
Warrior.
Warrior.
That's a good one. Warrior.
Well, anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. It was wonderful. Emily, I'm so glad you came. I hope you feel better. Did you want to say anything before we go?
I think she is talking, but
Oh, we can't.
you're on mute.
Am I okay now?
Yes,
Yes,
you're okay.
we can hear you now.
Okay. I think we're healing each other by getting together and sharing our approaches. And I also think that the hope that your book will give the world will be an inspiration to everyone. Thank you so much.
Can I send you a copy?
Oh, I would love that.
All right, can you help me do that, somebody?
I'll give it to you.
Okay. Jody will help me get it to you.
Okay, through John.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you all so much.
I think you're right. We help each other just by being together. I agree with that.
Well,
Hope you feel better, Emily.
thank you.
I'll give you 1 minute.